Welcome back. This is Erica, aka ECR Horses 1901, and we are here for the 8th video of tier ranking every traditional sized Breyer model horse mold. Without any further ado, let's go. First up today, Saddlebred Weanling, introduced in 1973, sculpted by Marvin Morin. You just interrupted my video. Anyway, the Saddlebred Weanling is an unfortunate guy. This is another mold where even nice colors or a good gloss can't overshadow the conformational defects, especially, you guessed it, with the head and face. We've still got a lot of horses to get through today, so that's as much as I'm going to say here. F tier. Solinero, introduced in 2007, sculpted by Brigitte Eberl. This is a great warm blood mold. And, you know, at this point, I'm upset that I wasn't collecting horses during the early 2000s because I should have been in just about horses connoisseur club. Not that I would have had the money for models back then, but man, look at Rubicon from 2008. That is one nice Appaloosa. You really can't go wrong here. All of the models are great. S tier. San Domingo, introduced in 1978, sculpted by Chris Hess. I have two models on this mold from back in the day. One is this Comanche pony from 1999 through 1992. This was, I think, my third Breyer ever, and I named her Honey. Very creative, I know. Then I got Domino, the Happy Canyon Trail horse, who was a commemorative edition back in 1993. This is another example of a mold that's definitely not perfect, but there's something kind of sweet about it at the same time. It looks like in 2018, this was the Vintage Club model, or one of the Vintage Club models, a glossy chestnut Overo named Roman. I also find the 1999 Breyerfest raffle and live auction edition Ransom interesting, with a golden sheen to its markings that you can kind of see in this picture. This mold has been used as a Breyerfest live auction model 16 times, so obviously the company thinks fondly of it as well. Most recently, this was in 2012 with this Leopard Appaloosa version, which sold for $1,200. San Domingo, you're going in B tier. Scratching Foal, introduced in 1970, sculpted by Chris Hess. Definitely a fun, full mold, which was in regular production up until 2009. I don't have a lot to say here, he's nothing fantastic or overly gross. Straight C tier. Sea Star, introduced in 1980, sculpted by Chris Hess. Why did this happen? Who signed off on this? Oh my god, this is honestly painful to look at. Like, if you just look at this front end, like, what is even happening here? This is an abomination against horses. But I kinda want one just to own it. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry, Sea Star. I wish you were better. This has to be F tier, even though it's funny. Okay, back to one that looks like a horse anyway. Secretariat, introduced in 1987, sculpted by Chris Hess. It does look like we've got another lumpy boy here, though maybe that's just how it comes across in the pictures, as there's nothing specifically stating that this mold has the same issues that we saw back with John Henry. Conformationally, again, we have some issues, but an attempt was made. This is another mold that's been used throughout the years since its introduction. My cat is staring at me. He's been brought back as Secretariat a million different times, such as in 1998 for the Triple Crown 25th Anniversary Edition, which came with a blanket of roses and was sold by QVC and dealers, whatever that means. He's been a Breyerfest 1-of-1 live auction horse just 3 times, most recently in 2018, as this glossy, bright bay frame Overo Pinto, and he sold for $2,000, which was actually a bit below average that year. you know, because the mold itself isn't that great, even though the coloring is nice, I don't find that too surprising. Secretariat, we're going D tier. Semi-Raring Mustang, aka Mustang, introduced in 1961, sculpted by Chris Hess. This is another Kanga contender for me. I love a good semi-raring Mustang. I had one in my carpet herd, rarin' to go, who was a Grello model from between 1994 and 1995. I also recently picked up another one at an antique store, who appears to be Diablo the Mustang from between 1961 anywhere up to 1986. This is another mold that seems to have come in models of every possible color, including some decos like the 2008 Frankenstein horse, not to be confused with Frankenstein, of which only 21 were made for the Velvet Rope event. This was an event that was only for just about horses subscribers. I think you had to win a raffle just for the chance to even purchase tickets. I think it was one of those deals. But if you got in, you actually got a tour of the then new Breyer factory and offices, so that would have been cool. He's been a one-of-one Breyerfest horse 14 times for both live and silent auctions, most recently in 2023, for which he was a Grello Tobiano with cat tracks, who sold for a nice $9,000. Sadly, it doesn't look like this has been a regular run mold since 2008. It would be real nice if Breyer changed that. Semi-raring Mustang, S tier. Shagya Arabian, introduced in 2016, sculpted by Brigitte Eberl. She started here as Yasmin, a 2016 premiere model in this lovely bay Sabino. This is a very pleasing Arabian mold, and I would like to get my hand on some of these models. I actually did win a copy of KB Omega Fahim because one of the names that I had for one of my models that was in the Scratch and Dent show I mentioned won a best name contest after the fact, and so I was actually given one of these in box as the prize. And unfortunately has a tiny little imperfection on his front leg, but other than that he's great, so I probably will end up showing him. But yeah, I really do like this mold, and it's honestly kind of difficult to choose one or two favorites because they're all really nice. I'm gonna go A tier. Sham, introduced in 1984, sculpted by Rich Ruddish. From a really nice Arabian to a really okay Arabian. I did not know until I looked at this page that the earliest version of this mold actually has a wheat ear on the horse's chest. You can see that in the picture here. And this matches a description of him in the Marguerite Henry book King of the Wind, which I used to own, but honestly remember almost nothing about because it's been so long since I've read it. I do have Rana the Arabian Stallion from either 1992 or 1993. I really liked this coloring as a kid, and honestly I still do, although unfortunately mine is super beat up, so he's actually one of my older models that I'm considering painting over or just kind of experimenting with, so I don't know. Part of me feels bad about doing that to him, but he really is kind of in not great condition. Altogether, this is another example of a mold that is not perfect, but I generally like. The limited PetSmart model, Seth, from 1997 is really interesting, and also who knew PetSmart ever sold Breyers? I don't remember ever seeing them there. As is Lou, who was a 2020 Breyerfest special run, a nice glossy bay with a gray tail. There's more I could say about some of the other models, but again, we still have plenty to get through, so I do kind of want to keep going. Perhaps a kind of surprising A tier. Sherman Morgan, introduced in 1987, repainted/reintroduced in 2000, sculpted by Jeannie Mellon Herrick. The first Breyer I was ever given was Sherman Morgan, and he is beat to hell, complete with a missing front leg. but I adored this horse growing up. I actually brought him out for my collecting model horses at 42 video from a few weeks ago, so go check that out if you want to actually see him, and I'm sure I will be bringing him out again in the not too distant future. Hint, hint. Looking at the mold with older, more knowledgeable eyes, there are some questionable aspects here, including a pose that kind of falls into the what are you doing territory. This horse has been a one-of-one Breyer Fest live auction 12 times though, and some of those models are really cool, such as the glossy color change magenta from 2007. I wish we had a better, larger, more clear picture, but that's that. And also the sooty dappled palomino from 2013. I will say that the new tail is a big improvement over the old one, which identifier Breyer says first appeared in the year 2000, probably when it was reintroduced. All in all, it's a C tier for me. Shetland Pony, introduced in 1960, sculpted by Chris Hess. Sometimes you're cursed, sometimes you're not. There have been several pleasing colors on this mold, such as the Bay Tobiano from 1989 through 1991, and the Blue Roan Sabino from 2010's Trick or Treat Halloween set, which you can see here. I also would not pass up the one-of-one glossy Silver Bay Tobiano from Breyer Fest 2020, but that sold for $6,000, and while I might shell that out for a designer purse for a model horse, Shetland Pony, B tier. Shire, introduced in 1972, sculpted by Chris Hess. This horse is another unfortunate being. I think it's mostly with these legs, or more specifically with the feathers, which instead just look like awkward, I don't even know what's on the end of its legs. Plus, this is a model that just looks old, and not in a charming way. But Breyer has continued to use him throughout the years, most recently in 2019 as a Vintage Club model, Bernadette. It fares a little better in those colors, but that's kinda it. Unfortunately, F tier. Shire Gelding, aka Shannondale, introduced in 2016, sculpted by Karen Y. Gerhardt. Definitely a breath of fresh air following the last model. Much better feathers and body and face and pretty much everything. I like a lot of these and am strongly considering getting one or two for my show string, as right now I have absolutely, I have absolutely zero drafts. My favorites are the glossy Gray Shire, which was a 2018 limited web special, and somewhat similarly, the glossy Benelli, a lovely blue roan pinto, which was a pre-order from Breyer Fest 2020. A tier. Show Jumper, aka Jumper, Show Jumping Moorblood, introduced in 2003, sculpted by Susan Carlton Sifton. I didn't think this mold was as old as it is because it holds up really well. And sorry that I'm showing the offside, but the near side pic was really dark, so. Anyway, because I wasn't following the hobby at all during the 2000s, I completely missed that they made one of my favorite real-life horses, Ideal, into a model from 2004 through 2007, so he's very possibly going on my want list. I'm surprisingly not crazy about the Connoisseur Series model this time. Inconspicuous, a gray spotted Tobiano from 2004 that just doesn't do it for me. On the other hand, I am glad I got my hands on a Washington, though, because that glossy blue in person is truly spectacular. Like, he is probably one of my favorite horses that I've gotten since I started getting back into this earlier this year. Show Jumper, solid A tier. Show Stance Arabian Mare, aka Zafira, introduced in 2022, sculpted by Brigitte Eberl. This is a weird one because before I dove into this mold's page and identifier Breyer, I was ready to put this as an A tier or maybe even an S tier. Because I do like Zafira as a very modern, typey Arabian. But looking at the other colors this mold comes in at this point, I actually don't care for it as much as I thought I did. It's still a nice modern Arabian model, but I guess I'm just gonna wait and see what else comes along for this mold. A special release or otherwise limited yet obtainable blood shoulder would be amazing. So for now, we're gonna go B tier, though it is B+. Silver, introduced in 2001, sculpted by Kathleen Moody. Silver is pretty fun, and this mold does come in a lot of nice colors. Naturally, my favorites are ones that are probably not impossible to get, but very likely to be expensive, such as the Glossy Mahogany Bay Valentino, a special run from Breyer Fest 2001, and Star Studded, who is a Glossy Bay Blanket Appaloosa, which was a special run from Breyer Fest 2010. Oh yeah, and I'm sorry, but Leandro, the web special, and fourth in the Big Cat series from 2016 should get in the trash with Padma from the last video. Other than that, A tier. Smart Chickolina, introduced in 2005, sculpted by Susan Carlton-Sifton. You know by now that I love my stock horses, and this is a good entry in that category. That said, I actually decided not to buy Hota, I don't know how you pronounce his name, but this guy, the glossy black and white Pinto that was released earlier in 2023. I like the mold just fine, but not this particular color, surprisingly. Not even as a glossy. Surprise, surprise, my favorite is from the 2005 Connoisseur series, a Bay Pinto called Ivy League. Love the pattern, love the detail on the eyes. For Smart Chickolina, I'm dropping down to B tier, but I could see it being a B+. Smarty Jones, introduced in 2004, sculpted by Susan Carlton-Sifton. I know this mold was made for the thoroughbred Smarty Jones and has been used for other thoroughbreds since then, but I always see him as more of a stock type racing horse, like a quarter horse or an Appaloosa maybe, something like that. This is overall a very nice mold in a lot of appealing colors, although I definitely have mixed feelings about the two Guy Fieri horses that were part of the 2018 Breyer Fest special run. This mold has been used for a one-of-one Breyer Fest live or silent auction 13 times, which is practically every year since it was new. Unfortunately, most of those have not been great. C tier, but I swear some of the colorings on these models are trying to push it towards C-. But in any case, it's C tier. Smokey, introduced in 1981, sculpted by Chris Hess. Poor Smokey. I actually picked up one of these on the free table at my region's sale / get-together a few months ago. He and a few other models had been placed there because I guess a dog had gotten to them, and all he really had wrong was a chunk of mane missing. I think it was like this part here. So again, I figured I would use him as a body to practice painting or straightening legs or whatever. Anyway, this is another really unfortunate mold. We have the terrible combination of the "what are you even doing" pose, combined with a truly interesting face to create literally one of my least favorite molds of all time. I think even Breyer knew that they made a mistake with him, because compared to other molds his age, he's barely been used. He was last brought back around in 2022 though, for the Vintage Club as this glossy red dun Overo. The color and the gloss look nice, but I just can't with everything else. Oh yeah, and I may have nightmares about the flocked JCPenney unicorn from 1984. F tier, and frankly, I'd go F- if I could do that. And that brings us to the last horse for this video, Spanish Stallion aka Duende, introduced in 2017, sculpted by Mindy Berg. This is one of those rare molds where I love every model that's been made on it. The 2018 Web Special Deco, fantastic. I did make a point to order Trueno when he came out earlier this holiday season, and I do love him, but mine actually has a tiny bit of his brand missing. Although, I assume it's a mistake, but I actually watched somebody unboxing theirs just earlier today, and theirs also was missing a little part of the brand in the exact same spot, so I don't actually know if that's an error. But, yeah, I don't know. It was a little disappointing, but I probably will still show him because he's otherwise perfect. Not much else to say, really. I would be happy with any of these models. They are just really nice Spanish breed horses. S tier. Okay, so that brings us to the actual tier chart for the end of this video. And we had a few additions to every single tier this time, which is actually kind of unusual. So we now have 12 horses up in S tier, 34 in A tier, 26 in B tier, a whopping 41 in C tier, 22 in D tier, and 17 down in F. Before I close out this video, I just want to thank you again for all of your comments and for liking and subscribing. I really do appreciate it. And definitely keep your ideas for other types of videos that you want to see from me to do in between these different tier lists. Definitely keep those ideas coming. I am jotting them down. I promise you I am taking all of them into consideration. Yeah, we have 2 more of these left to go before we are done with all the traditional models, or traditional molds rather, so that's gonna be here before you know it. And then I will do a wrap-up / reflection video, which I think is actually gonna be kind of interesting, because I've really learned a lot by doing this, and I look forward to examining that a little bit further. So that's all for me for this week. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.